Greetings and salutations, friends, and welcome back to Truth Seekers. I am still recovering from a cold, so I want to. It's been a couple of weeks here, and I am living off of cough drops, Fisherman's Friend. Those are the best. Or Altoids, right? Altoids and Fisherman's Friends are my favorite. So I'm living off of cough drops and hot tea with lemon and honey. So I just want to mention that because there have been a few people that these audio files get to me. There have been a few people that complained about for 2 or 3 second dead air spaces in the audio podcast. And for that, I apologize, but I feel that I'd much rather mute the microphone and cough and hack for a few seconds and unmute the microphone than just cough and hack throughout a 2 hour broadcast. Doing the best that I can here to survive through it. Um, I don't have the right to complain, however, because I haven't been sick in 2 years. Not a sniffle, not a cough, not a scratchy throat, not a fever, nothing in 2 years. And most of that is probably due to the lockdowns and my, self quarantining and my children being out of school. Anybody who has children knows that your children go to school and their children are just germ factories or germ carriers. I don't know. If you have children, you get sick all the time. You get these colds and flus and stomach viruses or whatever 3-4 times a year at least. And I guess because my children weren't in school, I haven't gotten sick in years. Maybe my immune system isn't up for this, but I have been taking a great deal of supplements um, designed to help boost the immune system. Um, I don't know what to say. Just terrible cold, terrible. And I'm losing my voice every other day. So please pardon my scratchy voice. So today, what's on the agenda is Phil Schneider. Now, people have brought Phil Schneider up to me many times, and it's interesting to me that everybody who brings Phil Schneider up to me, I mention some of his past and say, "Did you know he was in a mental hospital? Did you know he cut his own fingers off?" And that there is documented proof and evidence that he was in a mental hospital for a long time before he came out with his stories about aliens and government cover-ups. And there's proof that he cut his own fingers off. For those that don't know, Phil Schneider in the late 80s and early 90s came out with some incredible stories about a government cover up. Phil Schneider claimed that he was a former government geologist who worked on DUMBs, deep underground military bases, for the United States government. His stories were very fantastical and often built upon existing UFO and alien mythology that had been out there for years before he started telling his stories. Some of his stories centered around information that others, like Bob Lazar and William Cooper, had already talked about. But he took some of the things that they talked about. This is my speculation and my analysis of his information. He took information from William Cooper, Bob Lazar, and others that was already out there and ran with it, building upon already existing UFO and alien mythology. We've talked about this previously. If you're going to come out with fake stories about aliens, it's best to include some percentage of already accepted things about aliens and UFOs. For example, many people tie their stories somehow to the Roswell event or to Area 51 or even S4, something that Bob Lazar invented. And Phil Schneider is no different. Phil Schneider told some incredible stories about secret trains, underground trains that went all the way across the country. This is something that William Cooper talked about before he did. Phil Schneider talked about deep underground military bases and top secret experiments and aliens in underground bases. These are all things that were existing mythology. Interestingly, Phil Schneider, one of the big, things that he would do in his lecture he would tell this incredible story about building a deep underground military base for the United States government. And by the way, I challenge anybody who calls him a former government geologist to show me the proof that Phil Schneider ever worked for the United States government as a geologist. I looked for any information that would indicate that that part of his story was true, and I was never able to find any indication that he worked for the United States government as a geologist. Just as in the case of Bob Lazar, I can't tell you, it makes me cringe every time I hear somebody say, Bob Lazar, former government scientist. There's no proof that Bob Lazar was a scientist. In fact, his education was fake, so he's not a scientist. You have to have degrees to be a scientist. But it hasn't stopped hundreds of people when writing about Bob Lazar or commenting or giving commentary on Bob Lazar's story from calling Bob Lazar a former government scientist. The same seems to be true with Phil Schneider. People routinely, when referencing him, always say former government geologist. But not one person who says that Phil Schneider was a former government geologist ever proves that he was a geologist employed by the United States government. Not one person ever proves that. And I've challenged some of these people who called him that. Now, one of the reasons for this broadcast is that people constantly bring up Phil Schneider to me. And most often, pardon me while I load up on these super minty cough drops. One of the interesting things is that when people argue with me, they don't accept the evidence that I can show them that proves, first of all, that Phil Schneider, there's no proof that he was ever a government geologist. That's number one, and they will not accept that. Now, I agree that the absence of evidence doesn't mean that there is none. Maybe it just means I haven't found that evidence and it does exist somewhere. But I consider myself a fairly decent researcher at this point, and I believe that if there was substantial supportive evidence and evidentiary support that he truly did work for the government as a geologist, someone would have found that by now. No one I know has found that. Next, there is clear-cut evidence in writing that he spent a long time in mental hospitals and that he was diagnosed as a schizophrenic and it also had some sort of weird mental disorder which caused him to cut, mutilate, and mutilate himself. In an FBI report on Phil Schneider, it's mentioned that Phil Schneider cut off his own fingers. Yet in his lectures, Phil Schneider would hold up his hand with missing fingers and he would say that he was in a firefight with aliens. And over 60 people were involved in this battle, underground battle with aliens. And he shot several of these aliens. But then they shot him with a ray gun and they melted off 2 of his fingers. This was very convincing to a room full of UFO and alien believers at UFO conferences. However, again, there exists in the form of an FBI report evidence from a mental hospital that he cut off his own fingers. So I don't understand people wanting to continue to argue with me about Phil Schneider and his stories. First of all, he's on tape, standing up in front of UFO conferences saying, the alien shot and melted off my fingers. But there's an FBI report, and they talked to the mental hospital he spent over a year at, claiming that Phil Schneider suffered from a strange mental disorder where he cut and mutilated himself for attention, and that he cut off his own fingers. That's how severe his mental illness was. Now, the other reason for my broadcast is that Phil Schneider is an incredibly good example of how UFO profiteers don't care about their sources. Because the truth is that this information, in the form of this FBI report about him being a mental patient and cutting off his own fingers, has been available for a long time. Yet, the people booking him at these UFO conferences didn't find it. Isn't that convenient? The people writing books, making a profit from his stories, didn't manage to find it or include that in their book. Maybe it kills the book. Instead of saying he was in a firefight and aliens melted off his fingers with a laser gun, saying he was a mental patient who cut off his own fingers doesn't quite sell the book as well as saying aliens melted his fingers off. Now, I found a few examples of the UFO profiteers that I think people should know about. Here is one example in the form of a book, and I own this book, which is filled with inconsistencies and garbage. First of all, look at this. Phil Schneider, one of the bravest whistleblowers of the 20th century, with overwhelming evidence to confirm that the Oklahoma City and World Trade Center bombers and 9/11 were exactly that. I don't even want to say that on YouTube. I may get this video flagged, stricken. I don't know. We have to be extremely careful on this platform with what we say, because the algorithm wouldn't know that I'm saying that I believe that, or that I am, saying that that's ridiculous. Because, friends, how could he have proven and confirm and provide overwhelming evidence that 9/11 was one of those things, one of those kind of attacks, when he died in 1996 before the 9/11 event even happened? But this is the UFO huckstering that we see. And who's this author? Arthur Berkeley. He says, Phil Schneider was a U.S. government geologist and engineer. Again, he doesn't provide proof in this book that he was either a geologist or an engineer. He doesn't provide proof of his education in this book. It's a very short book. It's like a 50-page book. And he doesn't provide any proof that Phil Schneider was actually employed by the United States government. But he goes on to say that he was involved in the construction of deep underground military bases known as DUMBs, and he was assassinated by he says this as a statement of fact. He was assassinated by a U.S. intelligence agency for disclosing the truth about U.S. government cover-up of UFOs and aliens. He says that on Amazon as a statement of fact. And I just want to mention that maybe, just maybe, the U.S. intelligence agencies might want to correct this guy for saying that as a statement of fact in his pitch to sell this book. And some people say, well, Phil's stories were great. I mean, what's the harm? It's a $7 book. When you're saying as a statement of fact that he was assassinated by U.S. intelligence agency for disclosing the truth about UFOs, about the U.S. government cover-up of UFOs and aliens, and you have zero evidence or proof of that in your book, that's problematic for me. Oh, and look at the quality of information we get. Many different topics are included in this book, including the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project, both proven fraud, fake stories. Sorry if you like those stories, they're fake. This was the most secretive project ever undertaken by man. Al Bielek, the guy who used to try to get other men to sit in a reclining chair and masturbate in front of him as proof they were part of the Montauk Project. Did you know that? That's how Al Bielek would tell if you were part of the Montauk Project. It was all about sexual energy. So you had to disrobe, sit in a recliner in front of him, and masturbate for him. Yeah. Very credible book. Authors like this, profiting from this man and his tragic suicide, are part of what's wrong with the so-called UFO or alien community. Now I'm going to show you something else that is equally disturbing. Yeah, look at this. Here's a DVD. Underground Bases, Reptilians, and the Battle for Humanity. The Phil Schneider Chronicles. Somebody is charging $95 for a DVD. and I don't have this, but I reached out to a few friends, and one of my friends has this DVD and told me that it is largely all of Phil Schneider's stuff that's all over YouTube for free, recut and maybe enhanced a little bit. You know, they ran it through some filters and then they put it all on a DVD, added some commentary, and it is $100. Great. And I love this. About the actor. If this is a true story, why is he called an actor in this, right? And again, Phil Schneider was a geologist and underground construction expert. We don't ever see the proof that he was. He's also a man who spent 17 years working on government black projects. Again, we don't see any proof of that. With a level 1 security clearance. And look at this. They just make some, I think they just made this up. Rhyolite 38. Oh, look at this. Phil worked at Area 51, S4, and Los Alamos. He is only one of 3 survivors from the infamous alien-human war at Dulce, New Mexico base. Again, he weaved Dulce, New Mexico base into his storyline. But the problem with that is that the legend of Dulce base was created by Richard Doty when he was trying to fool Paul Benowitz into believing that what Paul Benowitz was saying was aliens and not top secret drone technology they were testing. And Richard Doty literally drove Paul Benowitz crazy. Him and other intelligence agencies, counterintelligence agencies, literally drove a man crazy, trying to prove to him that he was seeing aliens and he was in contact with aliens and there was alien bases in Dulce, New Mexico. Great. So this is the profiteering that we see from people in the UFO community. $100, right? Who's the director of this? UFO guy. He's the director. And this DVD includes Phil Schneider, listed as an actor. If this guy's telling true stories, why is he listed as an actor on this DVD? It's because it's fake, friends. It's fake. All right. Oh, look at that. I want to thank Death Proof Bum 01 for a kind and generous £5 super chat, who says, "Have a beer, Stephen. On you, I'm going to go buy a 12-pack. If we get enough super chats, I'm going to drink 12 beers tonight. That's my goal. Well, maybe not 12. Sometimes I tap out at 8, especially when I'm not really feeling well. I probably shouldn't be drinking at all, but, you know, then the missus will get mad at me. You're not sick if you're drinking beer. Maybe I'm drinking beer because I'm tired of being sick. I don't know. And, we have welcome to the show with a kind and generous 99-cent super sticker. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find that one now. I'll share it on the screen. Welcome to the show. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. There's a money button down there. And especially for the solo shows, I encourage you to hit that super chat button, throw a couple of bucks in our hat. Oh, there we go. Welcome to the show with a kind and generous 99-cent super sticker. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support of the show. Patrick Sheehan with a kind and generous $4.99 super chat. Looks like I'm almost up to 12-pack money, friends. Patrick Sheehan says, maybe Phil has lost his marbles after a lifetime suffering abductions. Nah. Yeah, I think that he was a mental patient, and it's sad, but it's true. And also, I referenced 2 videos that we're going to share tonight. Oh, look at that. Popsicle Ocean with a kind... me too. Popsicle Ocean with a kind and generous $5 super chat says, I am drinking because I miss Anjali. Well, I'm going to ask her for another interview soon. I was kind of waiting, though, to see what else happened with her story. It doesn't seem like anything is happening with her story, but I'm going to ask her for another interview soon enough. That girl Jessica with kind and generous Australian $5 saying, blame us for the beer. Yes, I will. Thank you, that girl Jessica. And Popsicle Ocean, and welcome to the show. And what was the first one? I'm sorry, that was a new person to me. So thank you all for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. All the super chat donators tonight, very generous of all of you. Every dollar helps us to keep the show going. So I love it when you throw money at me. Every time you send a super chat, it makes a Stephen Cambian smile. Don't you want to see me smile? Yes, Mark Tarana. We're going to cover that tonight. Wasn't Phil Schneider carrying around radioactive materials to the conferences? Yeah, he was handing out uranium, highly radioactive, possibly deadly uranium to audience members. Sure was, and we're going to cover that here, friends. And the video that I mentioned earlier, there's two videos that I put in the video description, and revisiting this really made me miss him. I just want to say God bless wherever he is. Hope he's doing well. God bless Joe from the Carolinas, who did an incredible amount of research and proved this whole story is bull, which means I didn't have to because he did it already. So when people would start telling me, maybe you ought to look into Phil Schneider, I would just send them the links and say, Joe from the Carolinas already busted this story wide open. The story's fake. He was a mental patient who cut off his own fingers. But people still want to argue with me. So we're doing this show tonight so that I have my own link. And I will include this information from Joe from the Carolinas and offer some additional commentary because it's been some time since Joe has made those videos. And 1 second here. I'm going to get my fair use banner up, even though I think Joe from the Carolinas would be quite all right with us sharing his video. 1 second. Yeah, so this is fair use. This is transformative work. We're educating the public, and we're going to be critiquing this video that we are sharing. This is certainly covered under fair use because we're using it for educational purposes, and we're going to be offering our critique and commentary on the video that we're sharing. This is certainly allowed by law. This is fair use, friends. So there's two parts, actually. I don't know if we're going to play both, but we probably will. Because it's important to get the whole picture of Mr. Philip Schneider. So this is fair use. Let me back this up.
Phil Schneider, declassified secrets revealed. This is breaking news, folks. You want to tune in. Let's get into it.
Come on, let's go. Let's look for you.
Hi, I'm Joe from the Carolinas, helping you confront the ad paranormal with reason, logic, and common sense. In this video, I'm going to present to you just declassified information today concerning the case of Phil Schneider, alleged deep underground military base whistleblower. This is the guy that has been in ufology circles for a long time now, deceased, who claimed to be involved in a military alien shootout underground in Dulce, New Mexico. Now, as part of our ongoing underground-based deep dig series here on the Joe from the Carolinas channel, you can catch the rest of that series and other episodes right here, which is where we've already done some of the background investigation as well as opinion on Phil Schneider. As a lead-in to this, I need to let you know that my interest and my team's interest in this topic is not to outright debunk Phil Schneider. It is to try to establish foundations in all areas of the paranormal, ufology, and secret space so that we can figure out what's really going on. I kind of see it like a bridge. The bridge is between blind belief and absolute knee-jerk skepticism. I'm neither. I'm kind of right in the middle. So let's follow the logic and look at the data. And if you like that sort of thing, please do reach down there, hit subscribe, and share this video. All right, so here's...
I guess Joe from the Carolinas was ahead of his time. Look, he's wearing like surgical gloves before, and this is pre-health crisis.
The document, again, just got this today from the FBI, a Freedom of Information Act request. And you can see right there, declassified today, September 18th, 2018. So there's my source.
Yeah, I guess I may have been a little unfair in, attacking UFO conference organizers because this information wasn't declassified until recently. But still, I think there is a rush to profit from people in the UFO community. And I think that UFO conference organizers need to do more to make sure that the people they're putting on a stage aren't just nutters.
I do believe in citing sources, especially when it comes to whistleblowers and things of that nature. So special thanks to my research team. We have learned some information that none of you have heard before. And quite frankly, I was shocked to learn this myself. So the document tells us that on March 22nd, 1975, an acquaintance of Phil Schneider turned Phil Schneider in to the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Oregon State, because Schneider claimed to be attempting to build a nuclear device and had radioactive material. And I quote from the FBI document, quote, Schneider was a former patient at Damisch State Hospital, Wilsonville, Oregon, from July 1968 to January of 1969. While at the state psychiatric hospital, Schneider was characterized as having schizophrenia. Under stress, Schneider would mutilate himself for self-attention and had amputated 2 fingers and a thumb.
Yeah. So right here in black and white, we get the proof that Phil Schneider, every time he held up his fingers at a UFO conference and claimed that aliens melted his fingers and his thumb off with a laser weapon or energy weapon, we see right here in black and white that Phil Schneider was lying. He amputated 2 fingers and a thumb.
Now, Schneider's uncle was a surgeon and a physician. His name was Leo Schneider, MD. The FBI talked to Phil Schneider's uncle regarding Phil's possession of radioactive material. And apparently Phil gave his uncle 2 chunks of radioactive material. So his uncle gave it to the FBI and they tested it. The report goes on to say that the material was examined by Ray D. Paris, a radiochemist, and initial examination determined that the material was uranium ore, and it was radiating at 100 milliroentgens per hour. Now, these experts that the FBI sent this material to said that the prolonged exposure to or ingestion of this uranium ore that Phil Schneider had in his possession and gave some to his uncle, who was a doctor, indicated that in a powdered form, it could be extremely hazardous. Phil Schneider, according to this just declassified document, was interviewed and agreed to be interviewed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Yeah. Did he tell us that in all of his lectures?
No, of course, he never told us that he was interviewed by the FBI. He never told us that he once was telling everybody that he was going to build a nuclear bomb and that he was in possession of the one super hardest component to get if you intend to build a nuclear device, and that would be radioactive uranium.
Now, Phil Schneider gave the FBI consent to search his residence, and they traced the source based on Phil's own report to somebody that he met in a local tavern by the name of George M. So he did not get the material from an underground base because this uranium ore was already traced back through the FBI, and they tracked down the guy that sold it to Phil. How much radioactive material? Well, Phil claims to have removed 300 pounds based on his report. 300 pounds.
That's 300 pounds is a massive amount of radioactive uranium.
Now, the FBI is really clear to say that Phil Schneider had no license to possess any type of nuclear source material. Schneider granted consent to search of his room by FBI agents and specialists that were going to evaluate the area where Schneider was residing, detected 4 to 5 times the normal background radiation in the parking lot of the building. In this preliminary video on this particular declassified secret release, now it's declassified, so the secrets are out. There's a couple things that I think about right off the bat, and that is that how many people were exposed to the materials that Phil Schneider took with him in the ufology speaking circuit. Phil Schneider would speak at conferences and he would hold up rocks and give them out to the audience and hold up pieces of metal. Well, according to Phil Schneider's own report, he consented to a search Folks, the guy had at least 80 to 300 pounds of radioactive material.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that let's just say, for example, that you don't have the scientific knowledge and the skill set to build a nuclear device, but you could build a what's called a dirty bomb. Friends, that much uranium, radioactive uranium, could really, really cause havoc. It could irradiate, half a city or a small city or a small town or something. Incredibly dangerous that he had this material. And yes, he would hand out rocks and samples and things and show samples at UFO conferences that he claimed he got while working as a geologist for the United States government, when the truth is he bought it from some guy at a local bar. Amazing.
This is a public health issue. Now, because of this history of mental illness, which the FBI also confirmed, they did not press charges. Phil gave up all the radioactive material, and the FBI said, well, this guy doesn't need to be prosecuted. He's got a history of mental health problems. He's amputated his own fingers. Now, this is very difficult personally for me, because in reading and digesting, consuming all of the ufology material, I really didn't expect to find this when my research team did some digging through the normal, natural, legal channels, the Freedom of Information Act system. It's with a heavy heart that I say Phil Schneider amputates his own fingers. He had a documentation of having mental health problems, and he consented to a search of his room, and the guy had nuclear material under his bed. Phil Schneider obtained material and since then claims to have suffered from nausea, hemorrhaging, and soreness in his extremities. He has kept the material under his bed in his room. What kind of judgment is that? The guy knew he had uranium and thorium or whatever in the heck it was, and he's literally sleeping on top of the stuff. I'm sure it kept him warm. But folks, where's the judgment with somebody who would do something like that? So my concern here and my intention is not to debunk Phil Schneider. My concern is for the people that are out there that have not been told. If you saw Phil Schneider in person in a conference and held some materials, you may have been exposed to radioactive materials if it was before.
Yeah, sorry, I left the mute on. Sorry about that. So what I was saying is that he when people argue with me that Phil Schneider was telling the truth, and then I show them, some of this evidence, and they still argue with me, I ask them, would somebody who is in full control of their mental faculties and not mentally ill sleep on top of 80 to 300 pounds of radioactive materials? Especially being a geologist, he would know. If he was truly a geologist, he would know just how dangerous that long-term exposure could be. In some of Phil Schneider's videos, he claimed that he got cancer from working on the dumbs because of all the uranium deep underground. Maybe if he did have cancer and he was telling the truth about that, he got cancer from sleeping on top of 80 to 300 pounds of radioactive materials.
Or 1975. I had to rush this video out to get this information to you, so that way the recently declassified secrets today of Phil Schneider and his interaction with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This information is going to be published in the in-press issue of the Shadows of Your Mind magazine, authored by myself as well as my research team. And you can find a link to that down below in the description box, along with a link to joefromthecarolinas.com. We will continue to confront this situation with some reason, logic, and common sense. Let's follow the data, follow the logic. Thank you.
Yeah, so there we go. And now we might see some other reasons why I say I miss Joe from the Carolinas. Wish she was still around, and other people are expressing similar sentiments in the live chat. People are saying he got doxxed by the blue chicken cult and walked away from it all. And that could be very, very true. I know that he stopped his previous coverage of these topics as soon as he was doxxed, and started covering basically space news, and lost most of his following, who was there for, I just turned blurry like Bigfoot. People were there to see this kind of content from him, and perhaps he lost a great deal of his following when he started covering under other topics, more normal. You know, he's covering like Elon Musk developments with SpaceX and things like that. Rodrigo is here, who says, hello, Stephen, in Chatverse. I miss Joe. Yeah, we all do. And, you know, wherever he is, I hope that he's doing well. I hope that he is, you know, I just say God bless Joe from the Carolinas. He really inspired many people to take up the fight about all of this fake information out there. And of course, me probably being one of them. I was already doing my audio podcast when I found Joe, when I found that he was covering a lot of topics that I wanted to cover and doing quite a bang up better job than I was doing at the time. I miss him. I wish him well, and I hope that he is doing very, very well. And the Sixth Sense, you could support Joe from the Carolinas, and I encourage that you do. Here is his link to his audio, or excuse me, a link to his Amazon page, right? Patrick Sheehan encouraging me to interview Joe. You know, I asked him for an interview a few times, but I think that was around the time after he had gotten doxxed by the blue chicken cult. For those that don't know, a certain UFO alien cult that believed in bluebird aliens called his place of employment incessantly. Like they had 100 people calling there, trashing him at his place of employment. He almost got fired over it. He almost lost his job because, you know, I mean, imagine your job and 100 people a day start calling your job and yelling at your boss. Why are you employing this guy who's attacking our religious freedom? That's what I hear happened. He wasn't attacking their religious freedom. He was saying that their bluebird alien stories were garbage and weren't real. I'm not sure what Spooky's referring to here. It says, right now, all the proof we have is your word, dude. Can we confirm this, or are we just saying things without proof? I'm trying to find out what. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And again, I agree with Spooky. You should post proof of that before saying, you know, possibly disparaging somebody and damaging their reputation, because that blue chicken cult put out a lot of disinformation about their critics, Joe being one of them. Yeah, let me see here. I'm trying to get a handle on what. Yeah, Indigo Genzo, I've never seen any proof of these claims that you're making, so I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that paperwork, because I think that you're repeating. I think that you're repeating some stuff from from the blue chicken cult. But yeah. Yeah, Joe's channel is great and helps people in real life. So we've got one more of his videos. This is the part 2 that we're going to share. And I suppose, Indigo, I'll look at your information and talk about that tomorrow. Wasn't planning on that tonight, but I will at least look at what you have to say. Victor Caliero, I believe, says, I would call the institution to see if Schneider was there, just to be fair. I'm not sure due to HIPAA laws. I'm not sure due to HIPAA laws if they can confirm that a mental patient was a mental patient. But they may have told the FBI that, or he or his uncle may have told the FBI that. Chris Johansson mentioning Joe was heavy into aquaculture or something like that. Yeah, he did gardening videos for a time and things like that, right? Unknown soldier saying, don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. Well, when we catch him lying so many times, I mean, he stood up in front of UFO conferences and said aliens melted his fingers and his thumb off, when we can see clearly in an FBI report that he cut off his own fingers and thumb, right? Lee Guy says, you covered the weirdness of the Montauk stories and them whacking off. A lot of people believe the Montauk story because of the show Stranger Things. Yes. We've talked about it a little bit. I think CW Channer has adequately covered that the Montauk Project were a bunch of gay guys that like to watch each other jerk off in chairs. Strange as that is, yeah. Maybe we'll cover that, right? All right, we're going to share this second video. One second. This is Phil Schneider, Declassified Secrets Revealed, Episode 2. So this is sort of the follow-up to what we just watched. This, again, is a short video, so hopefully we'll get through this, and then we'll have some time for the live chat and for discussion.
Phil Schneider, Declassified Secrets Revealed, Episode 2. Let's get into it.
Come on, let's go. Let's look for UFO.
Hey, this is Joe from the Carolinas, helping you confront the paranormal with reason, logic, and common sense. We're really looking in all areas of conspiracy theory, ufology, sacred space, as well as the paranormal to find a middle ground. So if you like that sort of thing, go on down there, hit subscribe, and please share this video. In Episode 2 of our Declassified Secrets Revealed series, we are going to be primarily focusing on the mental health aspect of Phil Schneider, an alleged underground military base whistleblower that was very active in the UFO lecture circuit back in the 1990s. And the reason why is because many people in the comments section, as well as other places, have wondered about how could Phil Schneider mutilate his own fingers. For folks just stumbling on to Episode 2, you could find Episode 1 right here. So that way you know what we're talking about. Again, Declassified 9/18/2018, FBI. We know in Episode 1 that Phil Schneider was interviewed by the FBI and was in possession of uranium ore and thorium, two radioactive materials. They were confiscated, or actually they were just surrendered. Phil just gave them over. Now, a little bit more revealed here is that Phil Schneider's supplier of the radioactive material, as I had mentioned, was a guy by the name of George M. Okay, and his full name's in the report, but to protect his privacy, I'm just using his last initial, but it's right here. This gentleman asked if Schneider was interested in these nuclear materials and brought him to a house located at 22nd Place in Portland, where Schneider removed approximately 300 pounds of the nuclear material, and then he described that material as similar to the kind that he gave to his uncle upon the FBI interview. Now, this gentleman, George M., was the estate handler for a homeowner on Northwest 22nd Place in Portland, and he was located again, George M. was located again by the FBI and granted consent to search the premises of his house, where apparently that's where he was storing his material that he sold to Phil Schneider at the tavern or wherever it was. Search of the premises by FBI agents accompanied by RCS specialists located approximately 60 pounds of low-level radioactive material in the basement and the attic. On consent of George M., this material removed and exposed by RCS specialists.
Yeah, so interesting. And I just want to mention, does anybody realize what, some rogue nations would pay for 300 pounds of radioactive material? Even just people who want to make dirty bombs. Look up dirty bombs. I'm not going to describe it here. It would be dangerous for me to do so, or how dirty bombs are made. You can look that up. But that material, 300 pounds of it, would be extremely, extremely dangerous in the hands of terrorists or rogue nations, or people intent on performing terrorist actions. So the fact that some guy just had hundreds of pounds of it is very concerning.
Now, Phil Schneider claimed to be a self-taught geologist as well as structural engineer. And because I did bring up the issue in episode 1 of questioning the judgment, what kind of judgment would someone use to store radioactive materials in an attic, in a basement, or under their bed? Right? Is that a sane person who would do such a thing, especially if they had training in geology and engineering, right? So here's what it says, the FBI report about Phil Schneider's mental health. Once we go through this, then I'm going to give you some commentary on it. Quote, Schneider was a former patient at Damisch State Hospital, Wilsonville, Oregon, from July 30th, 1968 to January 29th, 1969. While at Damisch, which, by the way, we did some homework, that place was shut down in 1995. While at Damisch, Phil Schneider, characterized as schizophrenic with chronic and differentiated traits. Under stress, Schneider would mutilate himself for self-attention and had amputated 2 fingers and a thumb. Now, that's all that they said in the report. So the commentary here is, was Phil Schneider a cutter? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
That makes sense.
Cutters, right? We see that on TV. People don't believe the FBI report. Well, some people don't. Some people do. Some people don't out there in the comments. I've seen those kinds of debates, which are respectful. And that's a good thing. And I appreciate that. Schizophrenia is a thinking disorder. It's a thought disorder. And it's really one of those things that happens sometime between the ages of 18 to 24 for the most part, unless there's obviously toxins involved in the environment. The person's brain is all loaded up with toxins. So to get to the bottom of this, because people think that the FBI is lying, and I certainly leave the door open for that. I mean, hey, if you can't trust your government, who can you trust, right? Do people with schizophrenia typically engage in self-mutilation? I don't think it's very typical. I think people with schizophrenia typically hear voices and typically have a hard time taking care of themselves, and also typically have a difficult time being around other people and talking to other people. So the counterpoint to this from the FBI is lying side of things is that they completely manufactured the whole schizophrenia self-mutilation component of this declassified report. I personally, and I'm sure many of you out there.
All right, I'm going to say this one time. There's somebody in the live chat that are making very disparaging comments and accusations about Joe from the Carolinas. If you have proof of your claims, then email it to me right now. I want the documents at truthseekershow@gmail.com. Otherwise, what you are doing is continuing to victimize this man just as a blue chicken cult victimized him. I happen to know where he worked. To this person in the live chat that are making these disparaging comments, I happen to know where he worked. He couldn't have worked where he worked with that kind of a criminal past or record.
There have seen reports of various ways that Phil Schneider claims to have lost his fingers. So his 2 fingers and a thumb. One report is that he blew them off using fireworks when he was a kid. I don't know about that. The second report is that he lost those fingers while he was in a shootout in the Alien military wars with the Black Berets at the alien Dulce base. So that's option number 2. And then, of course, option number 3 is he cut him off himself. Now, people do engage in self-amputation and self-mutilation for funsies, for real. And those people engage in these kinds of extreme body modifications by cutting off various pieces of their fingers. And there are, unfortunately, videos online showing and proving that kind of thing. So it is not outside of the realm of possibilities, although it's highly abnormal, that perhaps a theory is that Phil Schneider was into that sort of thing. Now, he may not have been. That is a theory. In the same way that Phil Schneider didn't cut his own fingers off is also a theory. We don't know. We weren't there. So if the FBI report is lying and they've contrived this whole thing to try to, I don't know, discredit him whenever anybody did a Freedom of Information Act request, then getting other records from other sources, including but not limited to hospital and hopefully family, if we could track them down and they're willing to talk, will be an important research task. But we're going to keep going with this thing. We're going to see how things go. Just because somebody has a mental illness, whether it's confabulated by the FBI or not, it doesn't mean that their story lacks credibility. Okay? It may venture and lean in that direction, but it doesn't automatically mean, okay, mental illness, therefore Phil Schneider was lying. I do not think that that's reasonable, rational, or logical. I mean, just a few lines in the police report when they investigated Phil Schneider having this material that he turned over to the FBI, as well as George M., his source. They went back to George M.'s house and got the rest of the radioactive material where Schneider was hanging out as well. So I don't know what Phil Schneider was doing with radioactive material. They're saying he was trying to make a nuclear device. Phil Schneider in the police report said he had no intention of making a nuclear device. And there were some questions like, well, why didn't they prosecute him? And it tells us in the police report that on March 27th, 1975, AUSA Jack G. Collins, Portland, Oregon, advised this matter not suitable for federal prosecution in that willful intent was lacking and any prosecution of Schneider unlikely because of the view of his physical and his mental condition. So that's why they didn't prosecute Schneider. And the Atomic Energy Commission of Richland, Washington was also advised of all the facts of the case. So there were some questions out there about, well, how come no radiation professionals were brought in? I need to tell you, when YouTube tells me that short videos are the way to go, it's really hard to cram 17 pages of facts and figures and everything into a very short video. This is why we do series. As well, the report states, quote, based on subject's past history, Phil Schneider's, it can be assumed his estimates concerning quantity of radioactive material may be exaggerated, right? So it might not have been as much as Phil said it was, even when he was interviewed by the FBI. Now, just because Phil Schneider had this schizophrenia undifferentiated diagnosis does not mean that his whole story was bunk. And I wanted to see if there were any sources where I could find a listing of if he was on any psychiatric medications.
It should also be noted that, well, I think it's public knowledge now, Joe from the Carolinas has a background in psychiatry. So some of his observations here may hold more weight if you know that Joe from the Carolinas works in psychiatry in his day job.
Many people that have a serious thought disorder or a serious mental illness at one way, shape, or form at one point or another in their lives end up being offered medication, right? Those that refuse and they're a danger to themselves or others at that moment may be forced meds, but that's usually in the confines of a psychiatric facility. Now, this report tells us that Phil spent time in a psychiatric facility, several months, as a matter of fact, in a state psych hospital from July 30th, 1968 to January 29th, 1969. I wonder if Phil Schneider was also hospitalized after this little run-in with the FBI. So what my team has done, past tense, we have already done a records request of the Oregon State Mental Health System to try to find all ALL of Phil Schneider's mental health records while he was an inpatient, whether it was once, twice, or whenever. And if they turn back nothing, then that means he wasn't a patient there. Because according to their own report, due to the laws that are in effect now under HIPAA, the Medical Act, and also the dates in which Phil Schneider allegedly was an inpatient in one of these psych hospitals, enough time has passed by where the records can be publicly released. So if and when we get those, we will continue this series and we'll do some videos on that data just to drill down a little bit more into this idea of what's going on. I sure wish that, I honestly wish that Phil Schneider was around to be able to talk to and figure out what really happened. How much?
Yeah, I would prefer that we get to interview him, but unfortunately he's dead. And just as in the case of Mark McCandlish, his death was somewhat suspicious. It was a suicide, but it was somewhat suspicious. So, of course, all the conspiracy nuts you saw earlier in the broadcast, somebody wrote a book and just put as a statement of fact that he was killed by an intelligence agency. He was murdered. No proof of that, no evidence of that, just a claim to sell a book, a very sensationalized claim to sell a very sensationalized book.
Much of this is misinfo, disinfo, or truth. So because Phil Schneider isn't around, we've got to look into the past as best we can to see if any data points converge upon each other. Here on the Joe from the Carolinas channel, my goal and the goal of my research team is really to find source material, not what somebody else said, but what we can find from the sources themselves, right? So this is kind of a difficult conundrum, but we enjoy the challenge. And from what I understand from the comment section and how often you guys and gals out there are sharing these videos, you enjoy this kind of thing too. So maybe some of us actually want to go for some reason, logic, and common sense. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Please share this video, subscribe if you like. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, and again, back to this issue in the live chat, I had no reason to look into Joe from the Carolinas. I had no reason to believe anything negative about him, but I will look into that. But I will say this, that someone being arrested for something is not proof that they're guilty of it. A conviction is proof that they're guilty of it. You know, I could talk a lot about how flawed the criminal justice system is and how district attorneys and prosecutors don't care about guilt or innocence in many cases. They just care about their conviction rate. So what I'll say on that is that I will look into it. But unless I see proof that the man was convicted of a crime, I will wait until the case has a disposition. Everyone is entitled to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, and including anybody. You know, anybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, or they plead guilty in a court of law. I wasn't going to get into this, but I will. I was once accused of a criminal act, and it all but destroyed my life. Just a mere accusation of a criminal act destroyed my life, my career, my job, my livelihood, my life savings. It cost me, I don't know, something like $20,000 in lawyers and legal fees to prove my innocence. In the end, in my situation, I was never convicted of any crime. But by then, the damage was already done. Luckily, I had a very fair judge in the case. who ordered that the media who had falsely reported that I had committed this crime that I was accused of but never convicted of, the judge in my case ordered that all of those stories on the internet be pulled and all records, even of my arrest, be sealed. But the damage was already done, and I suffered damage to my reputation for years until people sort of forgot about it. And there's a personal story from me. Be very careful in who you deal in business with, because in my case, it was somebody that I worked for off and on since I was, 16 years old, kind of a friend, family friend, and I worked for him. And he accused me of stealing from him. But it turned out that he accused everyone that worked for him for a long period of time of stealing from him. And then he filed insurance claims to collect money for the so-called stolen things, the stolen assets, and collected insurance. It was incredibly costly for me, both financially and reputation-wise, to prove that I didn't commit the crime I was accused of. Because you see, what can I say? The prosecutor didn't care that I had evidence that would exonerate me. The prosecutor didn't care that this person who made accusations against me had accused other people of nearly the exact crime and then collected insurance money every time he made an accusation like this. The prosecutor did not care. So I get dragged into, this as I recall, it was 2.5 years back and forth battles with lawyers and all of this stuff. Yeah, you're dangerously close to being just deleted from my life right now. What do you want me to do? I'm right in the middle of a show, and I got no email from you. I can show you my email right now. I'll do it. I got no email from you. Stop being a jerk off in my live chat. Email me off air. Talk to me off air about this, not in the middle of a broadcast, because you want to make accusations about a man. You want to disparage a man's reputation who, near as I can tell, has never been convicted of a crime so far. Look it, there's no email from you. This is the last email that I got. It's from Lily Nova. That's the email I told you to send it to. I didn't get an email from you. And stop being a jerk off in my live chat, or you're no longer welcome here. I'm just going to start deleting people from my existence like other people, right? I was very fair with you and these accusations that you're making, right? I'm very fair. I said email it to me. You said you did. It's not in my email. And you're acting like an idiot in the live chat, like making accusations against me, or disparaging me for not disparaging some other guy who I'm right now in the middle of a live broadcast. There's no verification that man was convicted of any crime. I'm not going to talk about it or allow somebody else to damage his reputation until whatever case is disposed of. In other words, give the man his time in court. If he gets convicted of it, I'll report on it. I'll mention it. But until then, that man is innocent until proven guilty. So I'm going to take my fair use banner down. We're going to take a short break for a musical guest, and then we will devote our full and total attention here to the live chat. And, I guess I should say, like, maybe I took this situation a little too personally, knowing what mere accusations can do to a person, what an unfair, unjust, or BS arrest can do to a man's life. We don't know that that's not the case here. Until the case is run its course, I don't believe that any man should have their reputation damaged. Let him have his day in court. That's his right, right? And that's where I'm at with it. Having had a personal nightmarish experience with a prosecutor. Yeah, I agree with you. Dark Sky File says, "Don't let it get to you, bro. People hate for no reason." I'm trying to be fair, but you know how you be fair to somebody that's accused of a crime? You let the case finish. You give the man his day in court, right? And then you could discuss it. Yeah, Deprogrammer is here and says, "Best as I recall with Joe, the claims were dropped." Yeah, people using a public website that says, well, at some point he might have got arrested for something isn't proof that he did anything. It's proof that maybe, just maybe, there was accusations leveled against him. Accusations and a guilty conviction are two vastly, vastly different things. And you know what I think? I think that England might have the right way to do it. Did you know in England, if you get accused of a crime, they're not even allowed to verify that you got arrested or accused of a crime. They're not allowed to discuss it with the media or any member of the public. They can't even verify that you got arrested for a crime until the case goes through its motions, goes to court, and you get convicted. If you get convicted at that point, after you've had your day in court, the English authorities will verify you were arrested on this date, you were convicted on this date, you're a criminal. But until then, they protect people's reputations from accusations, because accusations and a criminal conviction are two vastly different things. Straight Content says I'm a fair guy. Yeah, I try to be, but maybe I'm not. In this circumstance, I can't be objective because I went through a living hell nightmare for 2.5 years fighting a district attorney's office. It cost every dime I had and then some. I had to sell half my gear in my studio to pay for lawyers and private investigators and all this nonsense. And interestingly, you know what happened to the guy who accused me of that crime? He died a slow, painful death 6 months after the case was disposed of. Maybe that was karma for him. And it was a shame because it was a family friend. It was a guy I knew since I was a kid that accused me of something, you know? And the police didn't care. Just the mere accusation is enough to get you arrested. They called it a prima facie case. Do you know what that means? That means even though there may be no evidence that you did this crime, even though there may be zero evidence, just somebody going down to the police station, filling out a police report and claiming you did something is enough for them to arrest you and drag you through court, destroy your life savings, destroy your life, and destroy your reputation for 2 or 3 years or however long they want it to take. Right? Yeah, when it comes to the criminal justice system, I can't be impartial. I can't be fair and objective here because I had my own nightmare, you know? So that's all I'm saying. Give the guy his day in court. And hey, I'll look into it. But we've already got people saying that that was a BS case that got thrown out. So maybe, just maybe, if it's true, especially that was a BS case that got thrown out, we shouldn't be damaging the guy's reputation 2 years after a tragic event like that happened to him, especially if he was falsely accused and it was a BS case and it got thrown out. Why are we bringing that up? Alien scientist asks, are we talking about Phil Schneider or Kyle Rittenhouse right now? Well, I back up, alien scientist, rewind. We covered Phil Schneider. We used some stuff from Joe from the Carolinas, and somebody brought up that actually, alien scientist is a good guy to mention in this case. So somebody claimed that the person who I cited, whose video I played earlier, got arrested for something in 2019. But then other people said, no, that was a BS case and it got thrown out. And somebody in the live chat is arguing with me that I should, damage that person's reputation when it appears he never got convicted of anything. He got arrested for something, apparently, but he didn't get convicted. I'm not willing to damage somebody's reputation. I don't trust the criminal justice system. I think the criminal justice system is corrupt and they just want to convict people. They don't care if you're guilty. They don't care if you're innocent. And I told the story, Jeremy, about how I got drugged through the court system in a criminal case for, I think I talked to you about this, 2.5 years. It cost me, and $20-something thousand in lawyers and all kinds of, I had to hire a private investigator to prove my innocence. It wasn't innocent until proven guilty in my case. It was, I was guilty until I proved beyond a shadow of a doubt to the prosecutors and to the judge in the case that I didn't do anything. It cost me everything. It cost me my reputation. It cost all my money. I was broke after that for years. And I'm not going to impugn somebody's reputation. And, also, Jeremy, you're well aware that sometimes people make mistakes. And I don't believe that somebody should pay for those mistakes for the rest of their lives. I believe that, especially even if you get convicted and you serve your time and you pay your debt to society, you should no longer have that scarlet letter of that F felon on you, right? They wonder why people reoffend, and criminals get once you get a felony conviction, your choices are start your own business or work at Burger King or Walmart for the rest of your life. You'll never get a decent job. Yeah, Alien Scientist says, I know a guy it happened to. He is still in court with countersuits. Lawyers have taken everything. It's a total scam. Yeah, the only people who work out well with this stuff are the lawyers. Yeah, I've seen what so-called evidence you have, Indigo, and I'm not sharing it, right? Yeah, and I've already seen what you sent me. Others have sent it to me. That is a public record, which may not even be accurate. Let's be sure that these public record places may not even be accurate. You don't even know that it's accurate. First of all, and second of all, there's no disposition of the case known, so I'm not going to talk about what somebody was accused of on my show. Unless he was convicted and you can prove that he was convicted, we're not talking about this. And again, call me unfair. Call me, say I'm not being objective. Great, I'm not. Because I got drugged through the criminal justice system for nothing, right? I'm not going to drag somebody else's reputation through the mud until he's a convicted man. Once you're convicted or you plead guilty, okay, then I'll say that happened. But until then, I'll give him his day in court. And I think that's the fairest way to do it. All right, so we're going to take a short break, friends, and then I'm going to come back. We'll devote my full and total attention to the live chat. We will make sure that we read each and every super chat. I may have missed one, and if I did, I apologize. We're going to come back and read all the super chats. So get your super chats in now because we're going to be wrapping things up. We're going to take a short musical break. When I come back, we're going to make sure we read all the super chats, and we'll have some time for the live chat. I'll dedicate my full and total attention to the live chat. So let me find a appropriate musical guest here. 1 second here. Why is it I can never find the one I want when I want it? I have to organize this mess called StreamYard that I have here. Yeah. Okay, friends. I'm sorry. We'll be right back.
I think it's time we cut these cords that bind us. I think it's time we let the story end. I am wild, disconnected. I can feel I'm disconnected. Nothing's real, I'm disconnected. You can never touch me now. Disconnected. 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 Disconnected.
And we are back, friends. So I'm going to devote my full and total attention to the live chat. Comments or questions for me, please put them in all caps. I noticed William K. said, I still can't believe the guilty party didn't have to pay your legal fees. It all depends on what state you're in, William K. But in my state, someone can falsely accuse you of any crime. You could spend $20,000 or $100,000 on legal fees, and then you're not allowed to sue that person to recoup your legal expenses in my state. In some states, you are allowed. Again, if somebody accuses you of a crime and you can absolutely prove that you didn't commit that crime and it costs you tens of thousands of dollars to do so, you should be able to get your money back from them because they caused that damage, right? But not in my state. Marina Mavrogenis. I'm saying it better every time, Marina. I'm sorry. I love the name Marina, too. That would be on my short list of names that I would name a daughter if I ever had one. With a kind and generous $3 super sticker. Thank you very much for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. And I thought it would be fun if we play Spooky's latest out of context because it features David Wilcock. It's about this one time David Wilcock walked into a guitar shop. Oh, this is great. Let's play this. David Wilcock walks into a guitar shop. This is out of context CW. This is from Spooky. Yeah, let's do it, friends.
Hey, everybody. We're over here at Norm's Rare Guitars, and I've got my friend David Wilcott from the TV show Ancient Aliens.
That's right.
And
He brought one with him.
right. In fact, we're all here. We're trying to determine what planet Joel came from because it's something way out there. And we want to know a little bit about its birth, if it even was a birth. So, David, what are your feelings?
Well, I noticed with the hair on the face that there's some indication that he might be one of the Wookiee type aliens that we see out there.
But he wouldn't even be normal for one of those, right?
Well, but he fixed my guitar amazingly well. I have a Les Paul Custom, and I came in here thinking, I don't know if he's going to be able to fix this because the neck completely cracked. And what you did, I mean, you freaking brought that ball right over the touchdown line. I'm totally stoked.
So that's what they do from his planet.
Wherever he's from, he's got it down.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, you work back there with him, John.
Well,
I mean,
he was sending messages, I think, to the planet Zoran, which we haven't discovered yet. They taught him how to fix that headstock, just like.
There you go.
This is an antenna that he's got right there, which actually causes the access to occur, similar to the movie Avatar.
Mark, I mean, you've worked with him for a while. What do you think? I mean, is there any explanation?
He's not human.
for this guy?
Now I can tell you he's not human.
Well, we're trying to determine what type of intelligence,
If any.
right. But anyhow, this is Joel, our repairman, and David, who is has got a great show. And why don't you tell us about the show and the network and all that?
Yeah, I'm on the most popular show on History Channel called Ancient Aliens. We're into our 9th or 10th season now. And what we're doing is talking about the idea that ancient civilizations might have been visited by advanced extraterrestrials and that we have inherited their philosophy, technology. And I just love guitars. That's why I'm here. And I hope that you can understand that if you're living in Los Angeles, this is the place to go. Norman's Rare Guitars, the selection. I mean, I am drooling right now. Look at this. It's unbelievable. And this is the best guitar tech. I think it must be the alien DNA or something. But he's your guy.
His spelling is not too good. Anyhow, Joel, David, Mark, John, and Nora.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh no. Another quality video from Spooky there. Yeah, David Wilcock walks into a guitar shop. I, having heard some of his music, wonder why he needs a $3,000 guitar. Because I get by with a few $100 guitar, and some of you have heard some of my music. I do have a Gibson Studio, but it's in the closet over here, and I almost never use it. I use a cheap burner guitar. Ghost Rider. Steven, did you say you wanted to call Stravati Aerospace? Actually, Ghost Rider, funny you mentioned that, because today I talked to none other than Stravati Aerospace, and it's very interesting that when, hold on one second, when I called Stravati Aerospace, who answered the phone? Well, the CEO answered the phone when I called there today. I called and I said, I'm wondering if you have any person there who deals with media and requests, can answer some questions. And the person on the other end of the line, I almost fell off my chair, said, well, I'm Christopher Biscar, the chairman and CEO of Stravati Aerospace. I could probably help you. And more about that later. So he asked me to email him a list of questions, and I've done that. We haven't gotten a reply yet. I want to give him a few. I want to be fair. I'm going to call him again tomorrow, ask him for another interview. I asked him for an interview today, and he said he's not really doing phone interviews. Send me an email, list of questions, and I'll see if I can answer them for you. He didn't answer any questions. Spooky saying, hope you enjoyed that video. Yeah. And I think I missed a super chat. Let me go back in the live chat. Yes, we have Space Exposure with a kind and generous $2 super chat. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. And it looks like, yeah, so we got them all. Marina Mavroginis with a kind and generous super sticker. I'm going to check in. Also, there's another way that you can help us besides sending a super chat. And this is a good idea. If you're going to send a large amount, 20 or more, I would appreciate it if you would send it as a PayPal donation. And there's donate buttons in the About section, and in the About section of this video, and in the About section of our channel here, where you too can send a PayPal donation. Every dollar does go to help the show. So please, yeah, it looks like we got all the super chats. So I'm going to check in with the PayPal donations. It looks like we did get a new PayPal donation. We call out, just so everybody understands, we read every single super chat we get. We read them. Every person who sends us a PayPal donation, if you add a note, we read anything you put in the note line. So I want to thank Andrew, who on November 15th, somehow I missed calling it out on the show. One second. Let me take a look here. Yes. So Andrew sent a kind and generous PayPal donation of $12.87 and just said, praise the cash. Well, I want to thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support, Andrew, and to all the people who sent super chat donations tonight. I'm going to call those people out one more time, shout them out, thank them. Thank you all for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. It really does help move the show forward. One second. So for tonight, we had kind and generous donation from Death Proof Bum 01, from Welcome to the Show, from Patrick Sheehan, from Popsicle Ocean, from That Girl Jessica. Oh, I did miss calling this one out. James Allister gave a kind and generous $4.99 US super chat, said Phil Schneider's documentarian told me Phil lost his fingers when he was little. He saw a photo that Phil's wife showed him. Facts. Well, that's interesting because apparently the people at the mental hospital claimed that he cut his own fingers off, but they didn't say when. So maybe he cut his own fingers off as a child. Maybe he blew his fingers off with, somebody else suggested that he might have blown his fingers off with fireworks as a child. But thank you, James Allister, for your kind and generous super chat. I apologize that I missed it somehow and didn't share it up on the screen. So I will take this opportunity to say thank you very much for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. We also want to thank Marina Mavroginas and Space Exposure for kind and generous donators. Those are the super chat donators tonight, unless we get a few more, which are always welcome. Absolutely always welcome. So we want to thank everybody for their kindness, their generosity, and their support. This is a viewer-supported show, and every dollar that we get helps us to keep the show going and to praise the cash, friends. Thank you for your kindness.
You're watching Truth Seekers. Praise the cash, praise the cash.
So thank you for helping us to praise the cash. Much appreciated, friends. I always say this. There's 3 ways to support us financially. The first is by those super chats. The second, 4 ways. The first is by the super chats. There's a money button down there. The second is by a PayPal donation. There's links in the about section of the video and in the about section of our channel here. The third way is that you can join us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, where we post many things that are sort of give you sort of a backstage pass into the show and what we're working on here. I also post a monthly audio journal just for the Patreon supporters. And someday we're going to figure out Patreon only streams and get that going. I very much like to do that. And finally, you can buy me a coffee. You can also buy Kari a coffee. She helps with the thumbnails and all around running of the show. We're going to upgrade her from and give her a nice snazzy title like contributing producer soon. Or maybe we just did. I think I just did. So Kari's now a contributing producer because, it started out that Kari was just going to do thumbnails and a few other things. And then it turned into helping with all kinds of stuff, video editing and converting these midnight hour show episodes. Oh, by the way, tomorrow night at 8 p.m., we're going to have a bang up midnight hour show. I'll be interviewing Richard Doty. Now, this is certainly, it's pre-recorded. It aired a few years ago in 2018, but it's been called the best interview of Richard Doty ever. And I think it was Grant Cameron who said that, and a few others, but most notably Grant Cameron called it the best interview of Richard Doty to date. That's going to be tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Kari helps, of course. She converted all the midnight hour show episodes, cleaned up the audio, fixed, made them look a little nicer. And we're going to have that tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm hoping to also squeeze in an earlier morning show. Yes, Spooky wants to know, does that mean I have to wear a suit to the show? Yes, it does. Absolutely. Aaron says, thanks for covering this. Yeah, I would like to just say in summation of this Phil Schneider story, people ask me about it all the time, and I always show them Joe from the Carolinas' excellent investigation into this. And, people still want to argue with me that the story may be true. He killed himself, so conspiracy people think that the government killed him because he was telling the truth about those aliens. I don't find any of I'll just say it this way. There is zero corroborating evidence of all of Phil Schneider's stories. I'm going to say it again. There is zero corroborating evidence of his stories. What does that mean? That means you'll never find another witness to the events that he claims that he witnessed. You'll never find paperwork proving that he worked for the government, building deep underground military bases, or being a geologist or an engineer for the government. There is zero corroborative evidence of all of Phil Schneider's stories. But that hasn't stopped UFO profiteers, even though the man's dead now, from cashing in every chance they get, right? Every chance they get. Archaic Revival says, I have shared you with all of my friends. You are sponge worthy. I think I remember. Isn't that Jerry Seinfeld reference? She only had so many sponges. Elaine, right? She only had so many sponges left, and she had to decide what men were sponge worthy and what weren't, right? All right, we'll take comments and questions from the live chat for a little while here, and then I'm going to bounce out of here. Aaron asks, why was his face so bruised in the pics of him being dead? Though, strange for him to say aliens that look like people only have one lung. Yeah. Well, he was discovered in his apartment a week after he'd already died. That may explain some discoloring on his face. The coroner concluded that it was a suicide. I have no reason to believe that the coroner was in on some kind of vast conspiracy that would allow the intelligence, that would allow some three-letter agency to murder him and then jump on and help some intelligence agency cover up his murder. It's just not credible. These stories are just not credible. And just in the case of Mark McCandlish, when you really look into the case and you look at the evidence, and then in the case of Mark McCandlish, I talked to the people in the coroner's office. I got a sense of what kind of people they were, and I didn't believe that they would be involved in some kind of cover-up. That's my take on it, right? The documentation trail on Schneider does coverage that he never was a government geologist. It takes some digging, but it's out there. Thank you for that contribution, Amy Collins. And I believe that I concur with the opinion that Phil Schneider never worked for the United States government as either an engineer or a geologist, right? Yeah, and Charlie Weiser commenting that dead people generally are not attractive. Well, much has been made, and there are some very gruesome pictures available on the internet. We won't share them here because it could get a strike on my channel. But Phil Schneider was found, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 days or a week after he had already died. He was found in his apartment dead. So certainly somebody sitting there dead for 7 days, the body's not going to look very pristine, right? It's just, yeah, Blinken Liar says, especially after 1 week. The Sixth Sense sharing what's really hiding under Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. A deep underground military base, Sixth Sense? Survey says, yeah, I think there is one in Cheyenne base, but there's a real one. You know, there's always some nugget of truth in these stories. Is there such thing as a deep underground military base? Sure. Look at Cheyenne Mountain. Look at NORAD. There's a base inside a mountain, and it's put there to withstand a nuclear attack. So there's some nugget of truth in these conspiracy land stories. That's why they work so well on the average human psyche. That in the believing brain, people's confirmation bias, people want to believe, you know. And, also, I just wanted to mention that somebody emailed me this morning about this case, which prompted me to do this today. But, you know, no offense to that person, but they argue with me like, you got to look more into this. You got to investigate this more. What do I got to investigate? Apparently, this man was a mental patient who cut his own fingers off and then lied at UFO conferences saying aliens lasered or energy beamed his fingers and his thumb off. Or he lost his fingers when he was a child somehow, and he was using that to sell the story. I don't think I have to waste any more time investigating anything. That, coupled with the fact that there's no corroborating evidence of any story he ever told, and there's no evidence he ever actually worked for the government as either a geologist or an engineer, to me, it's case closed on Phil Schneider, and I don't want to waste any more time investigating anything. So what I have to say to the people that are making demands of my time is, you do it. You go investigate more. You go spend weeks of your life digging for more material on this man that would either prove or disprove his claims. And let me know what you find. And if you prove that I'm wrong, I'll have you on my show as a guest. And you can talk about all this amazing proof that you found that Phil Schneider was the real deal and really got in a firefight with some aliens in an underground base, bro. But I'm not wasting any more of my time on a nutter that cut his own fingers off and then stood up at a UFO conference lying to everybody. The aliens, they melted off my fingers, see? Ugh, no, I'm not going to waste any more of my time. The Sixth Sense reminding people that Truth Seekers is now available on Odyssey. Yes, we've partnered with the new video platform Odyssey, and all Truth Seekers episodes will be available on Odyssey. There is some delay, however. In other words, the Odyssey channel may be a little further behind, right? But eventually they'll be there. Eventually they will be there. Yeah, and apparently this case against Joe, I'm getting new information now that is saying that the case was the individuals in a smear campaign. Anyway, apparently the case was dismissed with a denial of restraining order. So, yeah, there were some accusations made against him, but those accusations did not. Yeah, temporary protective order denied. Somebody accused him of some form of violence, and then they wanted a restraining order. The case was dismissed, and the order for the restraining order was denied. So there's that. This is why we don't destroy somebody's reputation, because it looks like it turns out that the case got dismissed and they wouldn't even give that person a restraining order against him. So why destroy a man's reputation if it's simply an accusation? Anybody can make accusations. Proving them is an entirely different story. Yeah, and I agree with Spooky. That settles it. Joe was smeared. Move on. Well, that's not going to. People are still going to argue with me. That's not going to. That's not going to be enough for some people, right? Out of Mind says, I have a friend that worked at O'Hara and LAX airports. Yes, there are actual towns and levels under those and many more, according to him. He only get clearance to several levels down. Many, many stories about O'Hara and LAX having stuff underneath it, right? Yeah, Sixth Sense chiming in saying Joe was totally mistreated on YouTube and Twitter, and thanks to all the troll channels on here, he finally left altogether. Yeah. Yes, I've heard that stuff. Amy Collins, great point, says there are also tales of Denver Federal Center in Lakewood, Colorado has an underground complex. It sure does. It sure does. Well, friends, we're going to bounce on, pardon me. It's not bad enough that I have a terrible sore throat and a cold. Now I'm belching. Probably because I'm drinking hot tea with lemon and honey by the gallon. Trying to keep my throat together for just one. Can you keep it together for just one more show? Right? I remember being a rock singer and having to do, multiple shows, and, having some slimy manager jamming stuff down your throat. Like you could sing for one more show. We don't have to cancel anything. Okay. Yeah. Well, but it is kind of true though, right? I mean, I'm a big boy now, and I can tell you this. I truly believe that the show must go on, right? You just gotta power through it. You gotta make it. You can't, the world doesn't stop, right? As much as I'd like it to. The world doesn't stop when you have a terrible cold. It just sucks when you gotta talk and you need your voice to earn a living, right? You're dependent on your voice, and it is leaving me, friends. So I'm gonna bounce on out of here. Drink some more hot tea with honey and lemon. Not my favorite thing. And try to get some rest. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully for an early show, and then for our midnight hour show tomorrow night at 8 p.m. which is the interview of Richard Doty. You don't want to miss that one. Me interviewing a real life admitted government disinformation agent whose family has been involved with the UFO file for years. His uncle was involved with the government and the UFO file. His father was involved with the government and the UFO file. And he was involved with the government and the UFO file. For those that don't know, so much of UFO mythology came from Richard Doty. Let's see. The Serpo story, Dulce, New Mexico base came from him. The Paul Benowitz case came from him. Linda Moulton Howe claiming to see some government briefings about, aliens, tinkering with our DNA, which later made its way into Bob Lazar's story, and more. The MJ-12 documents, some people have claimed that Richard Doty is the person who created them. With help, of course, he would have had to have help, but somebody once somehow matched a typewriter that he used at his job at the Air Force Office of Special Investigation to the MJ-12 documents. And there is some compelling forensic evidence that he or his typewriter at the Air Force Office of Special Investigation may have been involved in creating those MJ-12 documents that are so famous and still debated to today. So many stories about UFOs and aliens lead back to, the aviary that involves Richard Doty, UFO cover-up live from the late 80s, that famous live television show that involved Richard Doty, and more. So many parts of UFO mythology involved Richard Doty. And I ask him about a lot of this. So you want to tune in tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be doing that premiere of the Midnight Hour show, interviewing Richard Doty here on our channel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be in the live chat, maybe cracking a few beers and answering questions, and I hope you will be too. Folks, you always hear me say this. I'm always happy when there's an audience. Tonight, we had some of the best numbers I've ever seen, especially for a solo show with no guest. I was blown away by the numbers tonight. Glad to see so many of you here. Thank you all for coming. You always hear me say this. I'm always happy when there's an audience. Thank you so much for coming here tonight and being a part of mine. So until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion, reminding you that sometimes the truth is ugly, but it's still worth having. Good night, and God bless all of you.